Hello, Matthew Bell with InsurancePrescription.com. Today I wanted to do something that was just a little bit of a change of pace from some of the other videos. I get into a lot of content that has to do with retirement, life insurance, personal finance along the lines of that. In this video, I actually wanted to dive a little bit into property and casualty, and the main topic of interest to me here was some of the top worries, the things that you have to be concerned about as a small business owner. And you can construe this either as some of the top dangers, the perils that you might face, or you might consider it to be from the standpoint of claims, what are the most common claims that you might have to face or have to file as a small business owner. So what are the dangers that you have to be concerned with? Now, many times statistics come from insurance companies, and this is no different. Ultimately, the source of a lot of this information is the Hartford, but there are a number of online resources that I used in preparation, and they all pretty much say mostly the same thing on this, but I'm going to basically divide the dangers into two main categories. The first are going to be people related, and the second is going to be, let's call it nature related or non-people related. So for the people related dangers, there's going to be two subcategories there. The first one is going to be physical. Now bear in mind that all of these dangers are not going to apply to every single business. So depending on the business that you're in, you may have higher risks, in some cases much higher in some categories and much lower in other categories. There are a few businesses probably that are going to have equal risk across the board in all of these categories, but these are just some things that you can start thinking about. And if you're a small business owner, then you want to ask yourself, which of these might apply to you? And if so, are you covered against those kinds of losses? So, physical. Number one would be a car accident. So here we have obviously delivery services, sales services that drive from place to place, trucking companies and the like of that. So there are a lot of really obvious applications for this in terms of car accidents, and you want to make sure that you have the proper kinds of coverage, because personal coverage and business coverage are going to be looked at differently. If you're driving for more than a commute and for more than your own personal use and in daily driving, then you're going to have to report that, and you're going to have to make sure you're covered accordingly. Now, the second category, and I'm going to deal with about 11 of these in total. In this subcategory, I think there's about 5. So the first one was car accidents. Second is going to be injuries. Injuries could be somebody falls on your property, somebody is in a store and they cut themselves on a shelf, somebody has an object fall on them. God forbid, there have been cases where heavy objects have fallen off of high shelves and killed people in stores. So hopefully we're not dealing with that level of severity. But nevertheless, somebody could pull at an item on the top shelf and everything could come tumbling down. Depends. Obviously, if you carry inventory, this is going to be much more of a concern than if you are a salesperson running a business out of your car. Then presumably an object falling on a customer is very low on the order of magnitude in terms of risk versus a car accident. Number 3 is going to be product liability. So here, obviously, if you have a business where you are creating products, you're going to want to make sure that you are covered appropriately for any liability in terms of injury that your product might cause. Another thing is you want to make sure that you are covered in terms of research and development, that you have all of the proper documentation, that safety studies and tests and so on were conducted in all the ways that might be relevant. And it's beyond the scope of this video to tease all of that out. It's going to be very heavily industry dependent, but you want to make sure you're complying with all regulations, all OSHA and other safety standards and the like of that. Now the fourth thing is going to be theft. Theft or burglary. Obviously this could be whether internal, employees stealing out of the register, employees taking items off the shelf or stealing from the inventory, or it could be external, a burglar coming in the middle of the night or whatever the case may be. Now a fifth thing is going to be vandalism. So vandalism of a property, this is going to be more prevalent presumably if you have a fixed location, a storefront, and oftentimes this is going to be dependent on what is happening in the area. So you want to make sure you understand what the risks are in your area. Your property and casualty insurance obviously is going to be priced depending on the perceived risk of your area and how likely a claim is to be filed, but this is one that you're going to want to keep tabs on, because obviously customers usually are going to get an adverse impression if your storefront is damaged or graffitied or the like of that. Now the second subcategory, we dealt with physical dangers that related to people. Now let's deal with some non-physical. So the first one that I want to cover in my total point number 6 is going to be intellectual property theft. So even though this isn't the theft of an actual physical object, it could be the theft of an idea, it could be the theft of a patent, it could be the infringement of a copyright or some other intellectual property. And in 2019, as I record this in November, there are a number of cyber crimes, ransomware attacks. And this is something that I might get into in a future video, but ransomware and the like of that can afflict a number of different businesses, and it can be extraordinarily costly and damaging. And in some cases, many businesses decide just to pay these ransomware attackers rather than suffer a catastrophic loss of all of their files, their data, or compromise of some other, or an undermining of their normal business operations. There are cyber policies, if I understand right, that a person can get. I'm not sure what the ins and outs of that are. That would be beyond me, but you would be obviously advised to look into those if you think that those kinds of attacks are possible given your area of business. Number 7, and the second point under these non-physical types of loss, are things that would relate to libel, slander, detraction, some kind of reputational harm is sometimes the catch-all term. Obviously, these are defined differently, so slander would be when somebody speaks an untruth of you orally and represents it as the truth. Libel would be when an untruth is written, maybe in a newspaper article or whatever. Detraction, on the other hand, is where an unfavorable truth is brought to light and it can damage your reputation. So obviously reputation in the past, this was extraordinarily important. I guess it depends on your area of business and how closely your name is associated with your brand, but it's something to at least think about and to try to guard against. Now the second category, that was all people related, and I dealt with 7 different things there: car accidents, injuries, product liability, theft, vandalism, intellectual property theft, and libel, and the like of those. But the last ones that I'll deal with are going to be nature related, and these are going to be fairly straightforward. Things like fire, number 8, hail, number 9, water damage, number 10, and that could be from pipes bursting, it could be from a heavy deluge of a rainstorm, which we had the last couple of days, it could be from snowmelt, it could be from a number of different rising river, depending on the area that you're in, depending on the season, depending on the kinds of weather phenomena that you are exposed to in your area. And the final one is number 11, that would be wind damage. And once again, we've had heavy winds here in the last couple of days. That could be tornadoes, especially if you're in the Midwest, although they occur all over. It could be hurricanes if you're on the coasts. It could be any number of different things. Straight line winds from a very dangerous thunderstorm. A number of different things that could crop up in terms of wind damage. So now with these claims, obviously there are ways to try to mitigate some of these. So for car accidents, you want to make sure that anybody driving for you has the proper credentials. You want to make sure the cars check out in terms of safety inspections. And you want to make sure you're properly covered. For things like injuries, you want to have proper procedures in place to make sure that your inventory is secured. You want to have product liability. Again, we already discussed making sure you go through the proper safety and research and development steps that are necessary based on any regulations that might apply. Theft, guarding against theft is difficult. You want to try and make sure that you trust the employees that you hire, maybe have good surveillance, possibly a security guard, depending on the nature of your business. Vandalism, cameras outside can at least help to catch or identify culprits. Trying to have fencing and other things might be appropriate, again, depending on the line of work that you're in. Intellectual property theft, making sure that you do register copyrights, that you do put trademark and other designations where appropriate, that you have proper patents, and that you have the license to use everything that you are actually using. Slander, libel, these are a little bit harder. Presumably the best advice would just be to try to deal with integrity with the people that you deal with and give them no angle or no ammunition to use against you. Just one word on cyber theft. Obviously there are security, there's IT professionals who specialize in security, and it's beyond me to comment on the ins and outs of that field, but if you are involved in the technology field, presumably you are already at least somewhat aware of these things and have proper steps in place, but that would be an essential component of guarding against loss. When it comes to fire, hail, water, and wind, We're talking about the selection of proper building materials. We're talking about proper safety procedures inside the workplace, making sure that electrical outlets and other kinds of things, if you have food preparation services, obviously that ovens, gas, and so on are properly turned off when it is necessary, and that all the equipment is properly maintained. And other than that, it would just be making sure that you have safety procedures in place if you experience a weather emergency, that there are protocols. Maybe there are shutters that you can place on windows in the storefront. Maybe there are other things that you can do. Sometimes there's not a whole lot that you can do. Mother Nature is obviously a powerful force, and trying to stand against it is sometimes a futile endeavor. But I hope that something that I said maybe has sparked your imagination or sparked your attention, was of some interest or help to you. If it was, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be alerted to new content as it becomes available, and I invite you to check back for further content, of course, and I thank you so much for being with me today.